Hello and welcome. This is Kristen from the Online Selling Show. I'm going to do a special episode today on international shipping. And I'm going to tell you that I don't do international shipping. And I'm going to start this video off by saying that it is nothing to do with any discrimination, like I don't want to do it, or there's nothing about politics. This is strictly business decisions and things that I've learned and dealt with along the way, and finding the best use of our time as business owners and being able to make, like I said, an overview decision on it. Basically, let's get into it. I've been selling for 22 years now on the eBay platform. I've been on Amazon since even before they became FBA. I was in the test beta group of people who were there, and I want to say that was probably around 2005 era, so I know I was with them before that. And I was there through all of the up-and-coming changes that we've seen. And I'm going to touch on those to give you some history as to how I reached the decision that I made. And some of these things you may be familiar with, maybe some of them aren't. So to give you an idea, when I first got started, there was no shipping calculators. There was none of this software that was in there for you to fill out custom forms and print up shipping labels and all that kind of stuff. So, in the beginning, I think a lot of these countries and things that you were going to be shipping to, they as governments probably did not have any foresight to understand how big online shopping was going to be. And truthfully, at the time, I was just doing eBay, and I was just doing yard sales and then getting into retail arbitrage. And it's only been the last 15 years that my business was in the wholesale business model. Now, my channel of the Online Selling Show is here as a vlog about my secondary eBay store. And you may say to yourself, well, Kristen, I don't understand why you're bringing up all this other stuff. What's it going to do to help me with my business? And I just say bear with me on this, because when I get to the end of this, there's probably going to be a lot of things that you've either had questions about or concerns, and I'm going to go through how we get to where we are today. So, like I said, in the beginning of this, it was very archaic in how they handled things, and you really didn't have an idea where things were going. I mean, truthfully, like I said, I kind of felt that internet was going to take off for shopping, but the postal services really were not equipped. There was no regulations of sorts. The countries themselves were not in place to make any kind of decisions or demands. And truthfully, we as Americans, we have a different model, and we kind of tend to think of things in our world. But one of the things I had to come across and realize was we don't have things like customs duties, taxes, whatever you want to say. So when you first start dealing with this, it's kind of it was a little confusing, why people would email me and say they want me to mark it as a gift. Because I didn't understand that in their country, when their packages are coming to them outside of their country, if it's not marked as a gift, they were going to have to pay certain duties and taxes on that. And a lot of people just were like, okay, sounds good. But what you don't realize is by marking things as gifts, you're committing a mail fraud. And it's okay, maybe you're not going to get caught, but there's still that level of your reputation in there and things like that. And so when things started to evolve, at the point in time that I was getting started, about 10 to 15% of my business was going overseas. So for me, I was very happy to do international shipping. It was, like I said, for the bottom line of what I was doing, it was a big impact. And like I said, I was learning as I went, and it was okay. But then as things evolved and we got into being able to print the shipping more online, things like the formatting started to come in for us to be able to use, I started having other issues that I didn't necessarily have in the beginning, which was, sometimes you're getting not an address that is going to be in a format that the postal service wants to use. I've had ones come to me and they're totally in the foreign lettering or whatever alphabet that they're using, and you don't even know what to write on. It just doesn't equate over to the English language, and it's not wrong. I mean, it's probably in their home language, but we're shipping it out of the United States, but our postal service wants it a certain way, and they want to verify, and you just can't move forward. Like, I could get to a point and I wouldn't be able to print postage. There was a lot of things where it was starting to get complicated because now all of a sudden, like, the governments, these foreign governments were starting to take notice that they were missing out on a lot of revenue, and they started making certain demands. And I know, like, right now, I believe it's the European countries are forcing through their regulations of sorts and stuff that, like, the VAT tax has to be collected ahead of time. So now this has gotten to the point where we are more in modern today, where I'm using eBay and Amazon to print my postage, and I've been in a wholesale business model. So for me, my products are pretty, if you're looking at a test market, are pretty consistent from year to year. I use the same vendors. There's some product I've had for many years, and it's the same year from year after year. And my products are desirable overseas, but with how much other international markets have now opened up for shipping and shopping for them, my percentage has gone down considerably. In my busy season, and I'm dealing with hundreds of orders in a day, I'm only seeing maybe 2 orders in a week during the busy season. In the off season, it's maybe 1 every other week. So I just said to keep that in perspective for the disruption of my business, that taking and stopping the process of what I'm printing up. And like I said, when we're in the height of our season, we are processing hundreds of orders out, and now it becomes disruptive because we have to stop and start figuring out what's going on in today's world of dealing with these internet shipping. And for eBay, that means I got to go figure out and find out what this VAT number is, which is basically a confirmation number that the VAT tax was prepaid, which is what these European countries are wanting. And when I say things in this world of, where does that fit in these programs? And it's like you have to stop and shift. My mind has to shift gears to remember where I'm finding it in the program, where I'm adding it into the shipping of stuff. And some of my computers aren't formatting this over to my Zebra printer correctly. So some of this stuff I'm having to leave the eBay site and go to my stamps.com account to print out the postage, which doesn't sound like it should be that big of a deal. But like I said, we're very repetitious at this point, and that time of having to shift gears could mean I could have lost out printing 4 or 5 other shipments that I could have gotten to. And now I'm giving up also some of those benefits that the eBay platform is going to give me for using their services, which is feedback removal if things are slow, or just, different things of like if the package isn't on time with my metrics and stuff. So there's certain protections I'm giving up by now leaving to go over. And yes, maybe I, as the business owner, should be stopping and trying to get figured out what some of these configurations are. I've done some of those phone calls. They just have not panned out to be the resolution. And like I said, I, as a business owner, have to stop and say, is it worth my time to figure this out? And I realize it may be a one-time deal, but it may not be. I mean, how many times there's new updates that come through and it totally throws out what was already in there to begin with. So that's just where we are in the processes of things today. But some of the other parts that have to be considered are what the buyers are, and how that creates its own problems because of customer service and expectations. And truthfully, like I was saying previous, that we in the America have this ideology of what happens with packages and deliveries and stuff, and it's not necessarily what other countries are and how things are being handled there. And one of the things, like I'm saying, is that, we as a post office, if we were to buy something from, let's say, England, we just buy it and it shows up at our house. I mean, it just comes through our regular mail and there it is. But some of these other countries, because of them having it come from a foreign country and an expectation of there being, customs duties or taxes or VAT or whatever you want to call it, added to the package, it goes to like a customs office, possibly. You have to keep in mind there are hundreds of possibilities because every country has their own method of how they're going to handle the delivery of mail. And sometimes it's even different in different regions. Like in my example of using England, there could be a difference of how they're handling it in London versus how they're handling it in their, country, the countryside. So I can't be, I honestly cannot. You're never going to be that knowledgeable to know what every country's method is for handling foreign mail. And what happens is when these packages start getting delayed or they start seeing what some of the costs are, they're asking questions that I, as just a little home-based business, is never going to have knowledge of. And some of it is them not understanding, for instance, that in their country, they may be able to ship outside of their country, let's say to us, at a much cheaper rate or a much quicker rate than what our postal service is offering up. That had to be probably one of the most prevalent questions. Was they want the cheap method because even the cheap method to them is way more expensive. And I don't know if these other countries are subsidizing part of their mail costs. I don't know. But they would look at it like they're paying 2 to 3 times more for our postage, and it's taking 4 and 5 times longer than it would from other places that they've purchased. And they're starting to question that, and I honestly have no answer for that. And some of the other things are now that these VAT taxes, I believe that's value added tax or something, that tax is what their countries are imposing on them for shopping at a country outside of theirs. And they're like questioning like why these fees are so high. And honestly, I can't answer that. That is through their countries to answer for those things. And where they would make those requests for something to be a gift so that it wouldn't be taxed, like they're not able to make those now. You can't make those workarounds to circumvent those because everything's coming through the system automatically now, which is great because you're not handwriting all this stuff and everything. But the buyer's perception is that things are getting to be way more expensive. And then they start questioning when it's en route to them and it's been 2 weeks, like where their items are. And if you shipped it first class international, it's like it could take 30 days. And at the Christmas season, it's especially taking the full 30 days. Or it got to their country and they can't understand why there isn't further tracking. With first class, it stops once it hits the customs, like once it hits their borders. So they don't understand why, and they don't know where to go to get the package. And the other considerations that come into this is that some of these countries, there's currency that they have to go through with the, the differences of what our dollar is to theirs type of thing. There's also the consideration they may have to go pick up this package, and they don't want to, or they don't normally do that. They don't know what that means. And I won't know that that's what that means either. And we start getting into a language barrier issue, becomes part of this at times too, because my only way of reading or understanding what some of these questions that were coming to me as was using Google Translate. And I'm not saying that's a bad program, but I don't know if it's the best. I don't know because I don't speak these languages. And truthfully, it would take 3 or 4 back and forth emails to get to understanding sometimes what I'm saying and they're saying, and both of us being on the same page to answer the questions or concerns that the buyers have. So sometimes that became much of a problematic issue as well. Other problems that crept up, and it's not a whole lot, I did write myself some notes. One of the concerns I mentioned was, sometimes the addresses don't equate over, and then before I know it, like packages were coming back, and people were, they were getting upset because they wanted this stuff, and then it's like, who's responsible for that postage that you paid? Because you paid to get it out, but they never picked it up. The address didn't equate over. They never got the package, so they just decided to send it back. That always became an issue because I'm going to tell you, sometimes, honestly, the postage was as much money as what you spent on the item. Just saying. And you don't want to eat that as the seller, so that became kind of a problem. Some of the other things were, if there was a damage or if something was not to their liking, I couldn't not allow them to return something like a domestic person in the United States would be able to. And then it becomes one of those, well, now how are they shipping the items back? And again, if it's just because they don't like it, they have to be responsible for the return postage, and they don't understand how to do all that, and that became a problem or concern. If the stuff was broken, I'm going to be honest, a lot of times I would have maybe, depending on what the item was, may have wanted to get it back and sell it at a reduced rate. And I wouldn't want to do that when it was international because it would cost me so much more money and I wouldn't be able to recoup it, that I would just wind up giving refunds. And like I said, sometimes the postage was as much as the item. So it really became that issue where I kind of dreaded selling certain things overseas, and I wasn't going to exclude them from my catalog of what they could purchase. So that became an issue, felt like it was rolling the dice as to whether or not I was going to get that stuff there and get it there, timely to these people's desires, to their wants and needs. That became an issue. One of the other things that had to be considered is what's known as freight forwarding. And I'm going to touch on this very briefly and just really summarize this to try not to be as confusing. Freight forwarding is basically what this eBay global shipping service is, but eBay is taking it on a role for themselves. There are private companies out there who offer what's known as going to be freight forwarding. So in other words, I, as a US seller, there's somebody that's, let's say, in Spain, and they want to get this item. I'm not going to be shipping to them. So they have me ship from my US address to a company who's got a US address. So I ship it for myself to them. Then that person who's this company will collect up I don't know how much of goods, and then they will ship it as one bulk package to Spain. And then part of their service is that once it hits Spain, they then take that bulk package and break it back down again to the smaller packages and ship it with the destination in Spain to the person's home in Spain. And they do all of that at a cost that's over and above anything that you, as the eBay seller, would be charging. But unfortunately, there's a lot of delays with that because they're waiting to get enough to make this bulk purchase shipment together. Or some of these companies were so bad that they weren't even shipping this stuff. They were basically stealing from these people. So I know Amazon, it is against policy for them. I believe it's against eBay policy as well. And I have been well versed enough in this that I can tell by looking at an address if something is a freight forwarder. And when these people want to argue that their package never arrived, they're saying it never arrived to them in Spain in my example. But my tracking is going to show that it came from me and my US address to a company or to an address of some sort in the US, and it's going to show as being delivered. So it became this who's right, who's wrong, because I have no control over who they've made a decision to get into business with for the freight forwarding. So both of these both sites, from what I understand, have made the decision they are not allowing freight forwarding. And in that example, I would be 100% backed, because as soon as I tell either one of those platforms that I recognize that it's a freight forwarding address, they're going to shut down the buyer's claim, and they're going to back me, which does nothing but infuriate and make mad the buyer, because they never received their goods. And I can't help that. So freight forwarding would just open the doors up for fraud, just everything that was negative for the experience. So that became an issue when you're also doing international shipping. And then one of the last items I'm going to touch on is when there's been natural disasters or some kind of hotspot thing going on that became not able to be shipped to. An example, I would say, one of the most recent one was when there was the wildfires in Australia. I believe it was Australia that made the decision that they were not taking incoming packages from other countries because they were dealing with the fires. They just could not handle anything else. And I'm going to tell you, I had multiple people I had one person try to make the same purchase 4 times because they wanted this item for whatever reason. I don't even know, because I don't sell like everyday goods. It's not something they need. And I had to cancel, because if I shipped it and the USPS put out there, if you actually give to us a package for Australia, that is going to the dead file, and basically you're losing your goods. And as eBay policy is, I would never be able to prove that it got to the person's existence, so I would have been out all of these goods. So I had that one example. I had to file a case because that my metrics were getting so messed up from having to cancel these orders because I couldn't ship to this country. And it was me having to constantly every week go in and look and see if there had been a change. Were we allowed to ship to Australia yet? And that's just me because of a natural disaster. I mean, there are certain countries that there are certain items that are illegal to sell to them. I don't always know what all those items are. I don't want to have to research every international package before I ship it to see if that's the case. And some of it is honestly things that would seem very benign to me or you, but is not allowed in their country. So these were all things that through all of the years either evolved into being the problem that it is today, always had been the problem that it was today. And up until about 2 years ago, we were still trying to keep that avenue open as a method of just making sales. And when I got more educated about what the eBay global shipping service was, I made the decision this was the answer to all of my problems, and I cut off all international shipping. And again, I made this as a business decision because at this point in time, as I mentioned, it is just a bare drop in the ocean of my sales. And like I said, it wasn't anything on Amazon for me because I have no longer done the Amazon FBA program. So that did not open me up to any international markets. I've tried Amazon.ca. It just did not work out for a lot of the same reasons. And when I realized that Amazon's global shipping provided a lot of things. For one, I just ship it from my home to their US location. It's usually in the Midwest somewheres, and I'm done. I offer free shipping on the wholesale business. And again, you may say, well, what does this have to do with, that's not what I'm looking for. I swear I'm getting there. So I get to ship to a central location. It's not the most excessive shipping that I would pay, which was going cross country. I know that once it leaves me, I'm done. Any of the questions that come up because it's delayed or whatever that has to do, the items are damaged, go to eBay's customer service. They handle everything for damages and all regarding, they may give a refund and then back me up with a refund to the funds they've refunded out of mine. So they refund the refund, basically. They handle all of anything to do with shipping to the international buyer, which means they handle all of the printing of postage. They have to handle all that address question and concern, all the forms and all that stuff. So I no longer have to handle any of that kind of stuff when it's not coming through properly. The formatting of the printing of the labels, I don't deal with any of that stuff. And then I don't have to deal with any of the questions of, why is this so expensive? I am sure eBay is charging a fee over and above what is being charged to the, in the postage part of it. But I don't have to answer to those things. I don't have to explain to them why the VAT tax is being charged the way the VAT tax is being charged, because I'm going to tell you some of those were based on what the type of product was. So meaning like clothing may have been different than home decor. I don't figure that stuff out. I have no knowledge. I have no ability to answer any of that if I wanted to anyway. So all of that gets directed over to the Amazon people. All I can answer is questions on the particular item. If you need like measurements or what it was made of or whatever, I'll help you with that. But beyond that, I have to hand them off to eBay. And one of the last things is, that discounting of multiple purchases. eBay never really made it smooth of a transaction for an international buyer to add items to their cart and then make a request for an updated shipping amount. So I no longer have to get that question of, are they going to get a refund for the excess shipping that they paid, whatever that may be. If they buy multiple items, that is on asking eBay where and what discounts are going to apply to their shipping, because I don't charge anything. It's free shipping for me in the US. So if there's any fees regarding shipping costs, they're eBay fees. They're not mine. So it's easy for me to say you have to direct it over there because there's nothing coming from me. There's no refund you're going to get from me. So that's where I am with the wholesale business. So when I started this second business, I kind of knew, again, Amazon is off the plate for me. And I had to make the decision what I wanted to do in my new eBay store with what I'm doing now with these used goods and stuff. And I'm going to tell you, it was a no-brainer that I was going to still stay in this global shipping program because truthfully, if I had to worry about my goods getting there that were brand new, I was going to have probably more breakage and problems if I tried shipping like used goods and stuff. So for me, when I'm looking at things, like I said, in a used goods, going from yard sale type of issues, I don't want to get into valuing the product and everything else, because I'm going to tell you, some of these countries look at it with what you're paying for shipping plus the item. Some of it is just the item. Some people want you to value it at what you paid for it, not what it was retail. None of those questions come up for you when you're dealing with the Amazon global shipping, because you're not filling all that stuff out. So to me, it was a no-brainer. When I'm telling you in this email or this segment, consider what the value of that service is for you, or what you're going to have above that service if you're choosing to do it for yourself. I'm sure I've lost some business by not doing the methods from my home, but I'm also going to tell you that I have a feeling that what my rates are, and I get great rates because of the volume that I'm doing, that my whatever settings may be in the accounts, I'm probably still getting the same rates internationally from my place to ship to, let's say, in Spain, than what they would pay, that eBay would pay for it. So when I'm saying that to you is just consider that extra amount of effort it's going to take you to ship from your location to wherever this other international would be, and really think to yourself, is this going to be that much of a higher return for you in your time? And again, what you're still going to have some expense, whether it's from you or them paying it to the global shipping service. So what is the added amount of sales you're going to get by taking on that whole role yourself? Maybe I'm only getting 3 sales a week out of using global shipping, and if I did it myself, it may be worth like 5. Is it worth those 2 additional sales? And it's not even like the full value of the sales. It's, you have to calculate it down to the what you would have gotten out of it afterwards. So when I'm telling you all of this, I want you to really open up your mind to thinking about what is international shipping, where we are. And I say this as well because, you know what, and I didn't finish the natural disaster one. In the example of how you were directed to handle when there's something like that that crops up where you can't, the answer to that was you were supposed to go in and exclude Australia out of your countries that you would be willing to ship to. I have thousands of listings under my wholesale business. That means I would have had to go into each one of those listings to exclude Australia out and then add Australia back when that wildfire situation got handled. There was no way I could handle any of that. There was just, I mean, I didn't want to have to hire somebody just to take that role on from like Indeed or something. It just was not, or Upwork. That was just not even an answer to my question, really. I mean, that was so unreasonable that it wasn't going to be able to get handled. And truthfully, we weathered that storm, we got through it. But when you look at what is going to be needed, you have to look at the whole picture and decide as a business owner how much you want to take on for that role and how much you have to be willing to use others. And I've just learned in my years of doing all of this that you're never going to be selling everything to everyone all the time. It's just the reality of it. And sometimes automating things, which is what's happening with me offering no shipping to international countries now, that's becoming automated to me now, because when that sale comes through, it's no different to me than any other one. I just pack it all the same as I would for any other domestic shipment, and it goes on its way. So I hope you got some lessons or some insight into this. Another reason I thought it was important to go through all of this is I don't know where this is going to go for us in the future. There's going to be change. That is one thing you can always count on, is that there will be change. And to understand how to change or what's going to be needed to weather that change, sometimes you do have to understand where we came from to where we're going. So I hope this gave you some understanding, and I would really appreciate some comments down below. I'm sure there's a ton more to this topic I have not discussed. I would appreciate, maybe there's things that you feel differently about. By all means, I'm open for any discussion on this. But again, I am removing any politics out of this. I am not in any way going to be discriminatory on this. This is what it is as a business owner. So I ask that you please be, in that direction when we have a discussion on this. I would appreciate a thumbs up if you got some good insight out of this. And by all means, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe down below, helping me build this channel, but also putting my future videos in your feed. So I'm going to say bye for now, and I'll catch you on the next one.